Time.
Outrage over a fruit cup from a UT dining hall.
Democrats keep control of the Senate.
And the Austin mayor election heads to a runoff.
You're watching Texas News Primetime.
News made for Longhorns.
Good evening and welcome to Texas News Primetime. For Monday, November 14th, I'm Lucy Lopez.
And I'm Angie Santos. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Last week, a UT student was allegedly chased, harassed, and reported to University Housing and Dining authorities after they took an 8-ounce cup of fruit from Jester city limits during the dining hall. The student recounted in a Reddit post that has been circulating amongst UT student body. UT prohibits students from leaving the dining halls with food unless carried out in the to-go containers, which are an extra fee. The student claims to have received an official accusation from the Office of University Housing and Dining Residence Life for violating the housing contract by taking food from the dining hall without permission from an employee. There is currently a petition going around in hopes that UT will allow students to take the food out they paid for without having to leave the dining hall with harassment.
On Saturday, 2 World War II military planes, a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress and a Bell P-63 King Cobra collided mid-air during a Veterans Day air show at Dallas Executive Airport. All 6 people aboard both planes were killed in the crash. Spectators described the scene as, quote, horrific and pulverized.
While ballot counting remains ongoing in key races across the country, nearly a week after polling closed for the midterm elections, the Associated Press and other major news organizations are now projecting that Democrats will retain control over the U.S. Senate. The AP is able to do this because they can project that Democratic incumbent for Nevada's Senate seat Catherine Cortez Masto will retain her position, defeating Republican challenger Adam Laxalt and securing the Democrats' 50-seat majority with Vice President Harris as the tie-breaking vote.
Following a sharp increase in student population, UT students have faced subsequent issues with affordable housing. I spoke to some of these students to take a closer look at what they're facing.
Year after year, thousands of UT students flood onto campus. While the pandemic reversed this trend temporarily, campus has since fully reopened. The university welcomed over 50,000 students this semester. This has led to an issue many, if not all, students have faced: affordable housing.
I've been couch surfing for about the past month. I think the more important factor has been money.
Prices range on West Campus from $800 to over $2,000, and even those who chose to sign in other parts of Austin, such as Riverside, are finding rates increasing. In some cases, students are still unable to find housing within their budget.
I've still searched for apartments even after getting here, and I still just have not managed to find a place that's reasonably priced or anything.
One of the hurdles students face is the process of leasing.
If there were more laws about being transparent about your availability, I feel like that would help so much. Because there's so many wild goose chases you have to go on, looking through websites where they say they're available, and then you have to apply, and then you realize later after you pay the application fee, they don't have anything. There are hundreds of scam accounts on Facebook and on even UT's website.
If you didn't apply for the co-op a year earlier, it's kind of you can't get a spot in that affordable housing. Housing is pretty difficult to contact. So I think, honestly, I think it should be a little easier to get in touch with them. Every time I've called, it goes to voicemail.
While UT could not give an official comment, they emphasized other resources offered, such as the UT Outpost, Student Emergency Fund, and Student Emergency Services.
And so it's kind of just, I think that's what my problem revolves around. It's just, affordable housing.
Go.
Last month, 12 UT undergraduate students from the College of Natural Sciences placed in the top 10 of the International Genetically Engineered Machine Competition. hosted in Paris this year, and according to the website, the competition pushes teams to work inside and outside the lab to create projects in synthetic biology that will create a positive contribution to their communities and the world. UT's team was the only American team to place in the top 10 for their work in detecting DNA from P. destructans, a type of fungus that causes white nose syndrome in bats, a dangerous and often deadly disease for the species.
A teacher at Bowles Middle School in Pflugerville has been fired after a video circulated of him claiming to be ethnocentric. In the video, he can be seen telling African-American students in his classroom that he thinks the white race is the superior race and that, quote, everyone thinks that they're just not honest about it, end quote. Pflugerville ISD Superintendent Dr. Douglas Killian stated this morning that the teacher is no longer employed by the district and that the district is, quote, actively looking for a replacement, end quote.
Runoff between Democratic State Representative Celia Israel and former Democratic State Senator Kirk Watson. For the uninitiated, a runoff is essentially a rematch between the top two vote getters that takes place when no candidate is able to break 50% in an election. The runoff election for Austin's mayoral race will take place on December 13th.
A federal judge in Texas has rejected President Joe Biden's executive action to cancel up to $20,000 in student debt for students across the country. Judge Mark Pittman of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas wrote in his 26-page report that, quote, in this country, we are not ruled by an all-powerful executive with a pen and a phone, end quote. He sided with the Job Creators Network Foundation, who argued that the plan ignored federal procedures by not seeking public comment on its program. The Biden administration said the Justice Department has appealed this decision.
Researchers from the College of Education at UT have received $4 million from the Institute of Education Sciences. The grant is designated to examine the efficacy of a peer tutoring program. The program consists of first and second graders being paired with fourth and fifth grades in YMCA programs. The goal of this grant and program is to minimize achievement gaps by providing extra help to students who are not provided enough resources.
With high inflation and low approval ratings for President Biden, many analysts saw the midterm elections for Republicans to lose. Now that Republicans have lost their bid to flip control of the Senate and with smaller GOP gains in the House than many had hoped, prominent Republicans are now looking for what went wrong. Conservative commentators such as Eric Erickson and Ian Haysworth suggested it was time the party moved past Trump. Georgia's Republican Lieutenant Governor echoed that sentiment on CNN last week. Take a listen.
Brian Kemp had this resounding victory despite the fact that Trump, had once predicted he was going to go down in flames at the ballot box. He defeated his Trump-backed opponent in that primary, and then, of course, he had a big victory last night. What message does that send, do you think?
I think it sends a message to the country, along with some other states, that this is truly a pivot point for the Republican Party. This is a time that Donald Trump is no doubt in the rearview mirror, and it's time to move on with the party. It's time to move on with candidate quality. It turns out Mitch McConnell knew what he was talking about candidate quality. We've seen it in Georgia and other places around the country where if they would have just woke up 12 months ago and stopped taking his lead and took the lead of what real Republicans, real conservative policies meant and mattered, we'd be in a different place.
President Biden met with Chinese President Xi Jinping to discuss major world issues amid rising tension between the two nations. The Wall Street Journal reported that Biden emerged from talks cautiously optimistic, telling reporters, quote, "We're going to compete vigorously, but I'm not looking for conflict. I'm looking to manage this competition responsibly," end quote. The talks come months after House Speaker Pelosi's unannounced visit to Taiwan and heightened military drills near the island on the part of the Chinese.
This past Friday, Ukrainian troops entered the southern city of Kherson after Russia retreated from the region. Russia's retreat of the region came 3 weeks after Putin declared Kherson a part of Russia forever. This is another setback to the Russian army and Russia's third major retreat due to Ukrainian forces. After 8 months of Russian occupation, Ukrainian citizens cheered in the streets and waved Ukrainian flags as they celebrated the victory.
At a United Nations committee held in Egypt to discuss climate change, President Biden apologized for the U.S. withdrawal of the Paris Climate Agreement. that was ordered by former President Donald Trump. Biden stated that the U.S. is still a leader on climate change and promised a low-carbon future. The summit, known as COP27, was comprised of diplomats, ministers, and representatives of nearly 200 nations.
Controversy over adoption rules for Native American children made its way to the U.S. Supreme Court this past Wednesday. Through Bracken v. Hayland, Jennifer and Chad Bracken had been taking care of a 10-month-old and decided they wanted to adopt him. However, under the 1978 Federal Indian Child Welfare Act, they did not have a preference to do so. Preference instead for children of Native American descent up for adoption are given priority to the child's family and then their tribe. In retaliation, the Brackens filed suit. This story is still developing, with the Supreme Court ruling on Bracken v. Hayland coming soon.
Coming up, we'll be bringing you up to date in the world of business, and we'll tell you what is going on in STEM news, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Sorry, it's breaking up my... Welcome back. This is PrimeTime. Here with us now is TNP business correspondent Ariba Barmal. Ariba, how's your day been?
It's been pretty good. I'm happy to be here this evening.
Glad to hear. Can you tell us what's happening in the world of business?
Absolutely. So, following Elon Musk's takeover of the platform, Twitter saw a significant drop in users. Estimates by the firm Bot Sentinel say that over 1 million users left the platform in the week following the takeover, with over 800,000 users deactivating accounts and over 400,000 accounts having been suspended. In other Twitter-related news, pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly and Company saw a drop in their stocks following a tweet by a parody account. In early November, Twitter changed its blue checkmark verification system to allow any user who paid just $8 a month to receive the checkmark. This caused many parody accounts with the verification mark to pop up, including one for Eli Lilly, which claimed the company would be giving free insulin. The day following the tweet saw an over 4% drop in the company's stock share. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, said it will lay off more than 11,000 people. This is one of the most significant job cuts the company has made and targeted mostly recruiting and business teams. Facebook has had a lot of success in the past years and bought companies such as Instagram and WhatsApp. However, it began to struggle financially this year as digital advertising declined, which is its main source of revenue. Amazon is also planning to lay off 10,000 people, which is also one of the biggest cuts in the company's history. A fourth tower with 72 beds is set to open this week at Dell Children's Medical Center. This expansion comes as respiratory virus cases are high in Central Texas, and the hospital is at capacity. The increasing population of Austin has caused the need for more hospital beds. A second Dell Children's Medical Center is set to open in April of next year.
Thanks for coming on, Ariba, and telling us what's happening in the world of business. Now coming on to tell us about STEM news is Joseph Sweeney. What's going on in STEM, Joseph?
Thank you for having me today. Jason McClellan, a molecular sciences professor here at UT, has announced a vaccine for respiratory syncytial virus will be authorized for distribution in 2023. The virus, which primarily affects infants, has surged as high as 1,000 new cases per week, although those numbers typically peak around 500 cases per week in years past. Until a vaccine is released, doctors urge those suffering from flu-like symptoms to stay home to prevent further spread of the virus. Furthermore, Dr. Patrick Olivieri, medical director of Desert Springs Medical Center, has warned that a triple virus threat may be heading into this winter. Olivieri, who is based out of Las Vegas, said children ages 0 to 4 years old are at the most risk of respiratory illness, with a surge in cases in RSV, the flu, and COVID-19. He said that although hospitals are prepared for upticks in cases, it would be best for patients to take preventative measures heading into the winter season. Furthermore, Dr. Antoni Ribas, a cancer researcher at the University of California in Los Angeles, announced on Thursday that a study involving CRISPR gene editing has successfully boosted immune systems in fighting cancer cells. The study, which was tested on 16 patients with growing tumors, alerts killer T cells to the presence of tumors. After 1 month of treatment, 5 of the patients reported their tumors had stopped growing. Former soccer player Matthew Fellini has recently been named CEO of GF Biochemicals. Their main product is a plant-based solvent called levulinic acid. GF Biochemicals spent a decade figuring out how to mass produce from agricultural waste products. According to Fellini, quote, it cut down CO2 emissions by 80% compared to its fossil fuel-derived equivalent, end quote. Fellini's environmental passion derives from growing up close to the sea and watching plastic wash up on the shore.
Thanks. Up next, we have a coming up on for our special segment of Press Box on Prime Time. We'll catch you right after this break. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Coming up on our special segment of Press Box on Prime Time is Tommy Yarsh. How are you doing, Tommy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. What can you tell me about what's going on in the world of sports today?
Yeah, well, the University of Texas played a football game this past Saturday against TCU. That's all I can say. It was a football game. We're gonna keep it short here in the first half. Here's Quentin Johnston for TCU in the first quarter. Excuse me. Nice pickup there. That was really all that happened. TCU gets a field goal late in the first half, but other than that, really, it's the second half of action. There's Ryan Watts on the corner blitz. That play has worked really well for the Texas defense this year. But when Texas takes one step forward, it seems like they take 3 steps back. And right here on this possession, Kendre Miller is going to take 75 steps for the first touchdown of the game. TCU goes up 10-0. So a big start for Kendre Miller on the run game. He's the only other rusher over 1,000 yards this season besides Bijan Robinson in the Big 12. Now in the third quarter, Texas offense needs something. And this throw from Quinn Ewers to J.T. Sanders over the middle is going to set them up inside the 5, but they'll just have to settle for 3. So it's 10-3 now, and after the Hornets get on the board, here's the backbreaker. Terrible blown coverage leaves Quentin Johnson wide open in the back of the end zone. That's the one guy that you can't leave wide open. It's the easiest touchdown of Johnson's career from 31 yards out. 17-3 TCU, and then disaster strikes. Late fourth quarter, Jahdae Barron scoops up the fumble and takes it to the house. This game is drunk. Does Texas have a chance in this game? Could you believe it? 17-10. Longhorns have life, but the life doesn't last too long. This first down coming up here from Amari DeMercado is going to ice it. TCU wins 17-10. They clinch a Big 12 championship game spot. Longhorns going to need to win out and have Kansas State lose a game if they want to have a rematch with the Horned Frogs in Arlington in December.
Oh my goodness, Tommy. So obviously we left a couple open for easy access to touchdowns, but can you tell me what you think was the actual root of the problem for UT this game?
Yeah, sure thing. I think that a lot of casual fans will try to tell you that everything was the problem, but that just really wasn't the case, quite frankly. The Texas defense played one of the best games of the entire year, by far. We saw that corner blitz from Ryan Watts. That play has worked really well for him. The TCU run game was, the offense, was averaging around 7 yards per play, and Texas was able to bring that down to right around 4, which is extremely impressive. Barron Sorrell had a career day on the edge. We hadn't seen much from him other than the first week of play. Terrence Brooks, a true freshman, played really good in his first start over at corner with Deshaun Jameson out. And the linebacker core with Jalen Ford and Marvion Overshown was solid as usual. So the defense really was the huge success and a huge takeaway on Saturday, which was good with recruits in the house. And Steve Sarkisian was really sure to emphasize that today in his weekly press conference. Offensively, however, it came down to TCU stopping the run defensively. Bijan Robinson ran for his career high in rushing yards against TCU last year. He had 7 consecutive 100-yard rushing games coming into this one. And he was held at just 29 yards on the ground. The Horned Frogs defense completely erased him from the picture on the ground, and that was such a big part of this Texas game plan that it sort of threw the whole thing off of course. So that, and they got pressure on Quinn Ewers and sacked him early. And after they sacked him early, I think it sort of just threw him off, got him antsy in the pocket. We mentioned his footwork wasn't really off, and that's what happens when you have a guy like Quinn Ewers, who's essentially a true freshman, hasn't played meaningful snaps in about 2 years, and he just needs to get more experience under his belt. It's something that's going to take time to adapt to. The only question is, can Texas fans and Texas coaches take the time to make him adapt?
Well, I hope he does, but what do you think is going to have to happen to make sure we can secure a win over Kansas next week, Tom?
Yeah, Kansas next week, one of the scarier games on the schedule just because this is a game that Texas should win. It's a game they should have won the past 2 years. It's been over 1,100 days since Texas has beaten Kansas in a football game. I think the defense is going to have to play big again. Jalen Daniels might be coming back from injury. He's their best playmaker by far. And they let up 57 points to one of the worst teams in college football last year in Kansas, and that just simply can't happen again. Offensively, I think the playbook needs to be simplified a little bit so that Quinn Ewers is more comfortable. We've seen in games like Oklahoma where when he's comfortable, he plays his best. But when he's uncomfortable, look at Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and most recently TCU, he's looked so uncomfortable and it just throws him off. Steve Sarkisian needs to settle his quarterback down so that he can get in a rhythm and get this offense back on track to being a well-oiled machine.
Well, thank you so much, Tommy. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Coming up, we are going to be looking at what is happening in the world of entertainment, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Texas News Primetime. Here with us is Kevin Myers. Kevin Myers, tell us what's happening in the world of entertainment.
Well, first off, looks like we're having some teleprompter trouble, but the new Black Panther movie just came out this past weekend, Wakanda Forever. Of course, this being significant because the sequel does not star the titular character, Black Panther, given that the actor Chadwick Boseman passed away a couple years ago. So I have not seen it yet, but I'm very excited to see it. I want to see what they're able to do with the story, and I've heard a lot of good things about it so far.
Yes, Kevin. I actually went to see it a couple of days ago, and let me tell you, it did not disappoint. It was actually very saddening, and but it was good to see how they paid tribute to Chadwick in the film.
Nice, yeah. In other entertainment news, Jimmy Kimmel will be returning as the host for the 95th Oscars this year. He'll of course be succeeding Chris Rock's famous/infamous tenure as Oscar host last year, and before that there of course were not Oscar hosts. This will be his third time hosting the Oscars, so we'll see how that goes.
Wow, I can't believe that. I know that there's been a lot of controversy with Chris Rock recently over the Will Smith debacle, so it's exciting to see this new host.
Yes, definitely. And then for our final entertainment stories, of course, Chris Rock actually will be hosting Netflix's first global live special. He's going to do a comedy show live on Netflix in early 2023.
I heard that he's going to talk also about the Will Smith debacle in the show.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to look forward to as well. So, Kevin, now that we're back here again from the last show, can you tell me what your favorite Rihanna song now is?
So, as everyone on our staff knows, my favorite Rihanna song is Bitch Better Have My Money. Since we play that before like every show, or I subject them to it now.
Yes, thank you for that, Myers. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, and as always, you can follow Texas News Primetime and TSTV News on social media just by searching. Also, take us with you on the go by subscribing to our podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. From all of us at TSTV News, thank you for starting your week with us this evening. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and make sure to gobble your turkey and mashed potatoes next week. Go out and change the world.